Good afternoon, everyone. Let's talk about the latest top trends in digital transformation. Now, I'm a very visual thinker, so I've been having a lot of fun recently with the latest generation of text-to-image generators. Can anybody guess the English phrase that I used to create this image? Anybody? The elephant in the room, exactly. And of course, the elephant in the room is artificial intelligence itself. This image is an illustration of that power. Right? The phrase means it's the topic that we have to talk about because it's so important. I would not have been able to create this image 6 months ago. Now I can do it in just 30 seconds with a couple of clicks, virtually for free. So amazing new opportunities thanks to artificial intelligence. Not everybody knows, but these are actually sliding screens if you try hard enough. There's been a Cambrian explosion of new opportunities when it comes to artificial intelligence. Now, if you've never heard of Cambrian explosion, that's okay, because we can ask ChatGPT to explain it. It was a period around 540 million years ago where there was a sudden explosion of new life forms, lots of experimentation, lots of new species. Basically, all of today's animals, including ourselves, date back to this period. And we're seeing the same thing. And the experts believe that it was because of the presence of oxygen in the atmosphere for the first time. So AI is a little bit like this new oxygen that is fueling all of these new experiments. So hands up if you've used ChatGPT. Hands up if your kids have used it to cheat on their homework. Right? The explosive use. It was the fastest ever technology in terms of adoption. It had 1 million users in less than 5 days, 10 million users in less than a month. But that's just one example of many other large language models and other forms of artificial intelligence out there. But of course, it's not about the technology. It's about what we do with it. Here's another image. This is, I asked the image generator to create an image of Istanbul at night. So this is what it represents. But can everybody see the AI in there? Let me make it a little bit smaller to make it easier. So how do we embed AI into everything that we do? Well, there's 3 big things that we need to work on. In order to get the most out of these technologies, we need to make it relevant, reliable, and responsible. So relevant is all about the data. Garbage in, garbage out. You have to use the right model to create the right data to create the right models. But it's also about the relevancy to your business. AI works best if you have a very discrete business problem that you know that the technology can address. So one of the things that we're all working on as an industry is making sure that you understand exactly what are the best practices. Out of all of these things you could do, where is the right combination of business process and technology. Then it has to be reliable. At the end of the day, algorithms are useless. It has to connect to the rest of your business so that actually something happens. Over 90% of data science projects fail. They do the model, but it never actually goes into production. Why? Because it's hard. They need to be scalable. You need to be able to update them. You need to be able to manage them. And that is something that takes a lot of work. And finally, it needs to be responsible, especially these latest generative AI technologies. As you've heard, they hallucinate. They lie. They make things up. As we adopt these new technologies inside organizations, we need to make sure that we have the guardrails in place so we're not running any risks that we're not aware of. So how do we actually do all that? Well, step 1 is to try and make it as much as possible part of the infrastructure. The best AI is AI that just works because it's already embedded in your existing system. So every vendor in this space is taking their existing offers and adding artificial intelligence directly into it to make parts of their job easier. You heard today on the Impact platform, Gen AI is going to be part of that. And I'm particularly excited about the boring stuff. Here's a nice example. It's Mercedes-Benz, and they had a problem with invoice matching. So this is where you send your invoice to your customers, and they pay you, and you get that payment information via the bank, right? And so you're supposed to have the same reference number, so it's supposed to be able to match automatically. And about 80% of the time, in most organizations, it does. But that leaves tens of thousands of invoices not matched. And then you can put in place like business rules. Like, here's the things that go wrong. We'll put in a traditional rule-based approach. That might get you to 90%. But now they're starting to introduce machine learning into there so that you can actually improve, and now they're up to like 96%. And these systems continue to learn. So it's pattern matching, replacing rooms of people just trying to figure out how these things to connect. But, this is actually an AI-generated image. There was no real Mercedes here. And I asked the algorithm, what are the Mercedes of the future going to look like? So it came up with these. I'd be happy to drive these around Istanbul. And of course, as we go further, they're going to take off and start flying around Istanbul. So where does this go? Well, you start getting self-driving applications, because every time there's an invoice that doesn't match, it gets kicked out to a human being who figures out what the problem is, and then that goes back into the algorithm to do a better job the next time around. So in other words, these are really intelligent applications. They're actually automatically getting better over time as people use them. And that's just one tiny example in finance. And I say it's boring, but it represents a huge savings in time and money. And the finance people loved it because it got rid of the most boring parts of their job. And so they were able to do what they really wanted to do, which was work on strategy with the business. So that's just one example among hundreds of others in finance, and perhaps thousands across the organization. Almost every business process has these kinds of complex, repetitive decisions that can now be automated in new ways. We can also use it to improve like real-world applications. Here's a nice example from the US, Avangrid. They run electricity pylons in the northeast of the US, and they had a pilot project where they introduced cameras into the cabins of the vehicles going to do maintenance. So as they go into one maintenance job, this camera is constantly scanning the pylons that they're going by, and they've trained a machine learning algorithm on lots of photos that can automatically identify the difference between a good and a bad lightning arrestor, and then automatically signal if there's a potential problem. So as they're going along one job, it's detecting the next job. You can see the little red marker here says there's probably a problem that needs to be addressed. And the project was incredibly successful, 40% reduction in time, 30% increase in efficient inspection process, and the one they really cared about, 70% increase in quality service and reliability. In other words, the grid went down less often because they were able to do more proactive maintenance, so their customers really cared. Now, what I found interesting about this project was, I mean, it's kind of cool already, but it was an open source model, and so they trained the algorithm, but then the algorithm was actually downloaded and installed in an edge device, a small Pi computer, in the truck itself. And in order to get the most value out of it, it had to be connected with their system. So it needed to use data from the cameras, but it also needed to have data from the underlying systems that said where the pylons were, when they were last maintained. So the relevancy and the context of the data was important. And then, of course, something has to happen. It actually has to go and put in the work order so that somebody can actually fix it. So again, algorithms are wonderful, but they have to be integrated into the bigger systems. Again, almost every picture in this presentation was AI generated. I asked it to create the shoes of the future. Kind of cool. And this is an example from here in Turkey, Flow Footwear. They use these machine learning algorithms to improve customer service, and in particular, the intelligent return process. So a very big company that sells millions of pairs of shoes every year, and they have people returning up to 500,000 pairs of shoes. And before, there was a process of up to several weeks where people would investigate and see whether they could give the money or not. They replaced that with an algorithm that automatically takes into account lots of different factors and instantly gives an answer to the consumer. So the response time went down from several weeks to instant. They cut the costs in half and increased customer satisfaction by 80%. Again, a great, complex, repetitive decision that the algorithm could do instead of us. I asked the algorithm to create a truck carrying sugar. It's a good example of how things go wrong, right? So we just took sugar cubes and made them all bigger. This is ASR Group. They're one of the largest sugar producers in the world. Lots of different brands in different countries. And their logistics problem was that they had sugar in their factories that they needed to deliver to their food customers. So it's an input into various different food production cycles. But the logistics are extremely complex, and the prices were changing very rapidly, especially in the pandemic. So trucking prices were changing very quickly. They needed to predict 3 months in advance what the price was going to be in order to quote a price for the sugar to their customers, and they were doing that with business analysts. So they replaced that with an algorithm. It took in lots of different data sources from internal customer data, external customer data, Bureau of Labor, the weather, and anything else that might affect the transportation process. A big part of using algorithms is the data orchestration, making sure that all of the data comes together on a regular basis so that you can use it in your algorithms. But what I found interesting was they didn't just take the answer from the algorithm. That was then given as part of an analytics tool to the business analysts. So it didn't replace the business analysts, it augmented them. They were able to get the predictions from the algorithms, but the algorithms don't have all of the context of what's going on in the industry. So the human beings added all of their intelligence to come up with a model that ultimately ended up with 95% prediction accuracy, saving a lot of time and money. So this is more traditional machine learning that we've had for a few years. Now we've got more generative AI, the more creative side of things. And a lot of the opportunities there are about synthesizing data. One example is freight documentation and verification. I was talking to BMW. They make 10,000 cars a day. They get millions of parts delivered every day. And that all comes with documentation, typically in like PDF document format. But it's a huge volume of data, and it's really hard to do anything with because it's in so many different formats. Now, using these new generative AI capabilities, it's much easier to classify them and to analyze them in the ways that we look at documents. Or we can use it in human resources. If you're creating a new job profile, why do it from scratch? That's crazy. Why not have it automatically come up with a job specification based on everything you know about the position, and then the person can augment it, can adapt it if it needs to be checked. But you can synthesize a new document from everything that you have existing. Customer experience. Obviously, we've all used chatbots. Did you enjoy your chatbot experience typically? No, it's just horrible most of the time, isn't it? Because they've been very limited, very rules-based. We've got a big opportunity to upgrade those with much more better natural language and the ability to understand the data areas. And my favorite actually area is anything to do with analytics. So we can now have these analysis engines, instead of us trying to figure out what we want, we just ask it in everyday language. I would like to see products per supplier for my region, and it will just generate the report adapted to the kind of question that I have asked. It's also worth noting, though, alongside all these opportunities, there are also dangers that we have to take account of. In particular, we're talking over breakfast this morning to some CIOs. Cybersecurity is probably the most actionable thing you should do right now, today, when it comes to AI, because it's empowering hackers to generate code faster and more efficiently than ever before. And then, I'm sure you've all done your mandatory security classes in your companies. What's the biggest danger for cybersecurity in most organizations? People, social engineering. But guess what? Deep fakes and the ability to create personalized, what they call spear phishing emails that have your name on it and they have the right details about what's supposed to be happening. That's a big danger. It's probably starting to happen right now. So you probably need to leave here and organize another training session for everybody around the new dangers. Bottom line, when it comes to AI, algorithms are fantastic. They really are going to transform every aspect of our business. But we have to know what we're dealing with. At the end of the day, they are psychopaths. They're very capable, but they have zero understanding of what's right and wrong. There always has to be a human in the loop. There always has to be a person responsible for any decision that the algorithm is making. So that's the first big topic is AI. So what's stopping us from doing more AI? Well, it's the second big topic, and that is data. If you really want to do AI, you have to start here. This is the sewers of your organization. Hands up if your organization has a data quality problem. Oh, come on, you're in denial, the rest of you. There isn't a company on the planet that doesn't have a data quality problem. And this, for most organizations, is the biggest thing that's stopping them. They find this great new opportunity to do artificial intelligence. Wow! But no, because they don't have the right data or it's not the right data quality. So the first big step you probably need to take to do AI is a small step backwards and actually fix your data foundation. Now, it's painful work, it's plumbing, but the good news is, on the one hand, the value of doing it is skyrocketing, because you can now get even more value out of it. And second is, we've got new approaches to data that are making it easier than ever before. So there's data mesh and data fabric approaches where I've been in this business for a long time, and anytime you wanted to do anything with data, the first step was always rip it out of all the systems and try and put it into one place. A data warehouse, then it was called a data lake, then they had data lake houses, and now we have data clouds. But the idea has always been, step one, rip it all out. The problem with that is you lose all of the context that's actually stored in the underlying data systems. So it's a little bit like ripping a tree out of the forest and trying to get it to grow in another environment. It's possible, but it takes huge amounts of work and resources because you've lost all of the roots, the metadata, the links between all of the different types of data, the security and so on, and then you have to recreate it all from scratch. So the new approaches are to leave the data as much as possible where it already is and create a meta view of your data to bring it all together as and when you need it. Who can tell me what this is? It does look a little like Netflix, but no, not Netflix. It's not a funky flag. Somebody told me it was a Paul Smith shirt, a deck chair material. Anybody? No, that's actually 170 years here in Turkey. Here's a more traditional view of the data. So every stripe represents the average temperature of the year for that year. Now, the trend's not looking great here. There's been a lot of red years here. And then if you look at the world level, it starts looking really scary. And you will notice that that curve is not getting better. If anything, it's actually getting worse. So you will have heard that around the world, the authorities, all of the world's scientists are warning us more and more that we are facing big dangers when it comes to climate and science. So this is where, and how do we combat this? Well, ultimate data is a big part of it. We need to work on sustainability. We all know that, so generative AI is sexy, but ESG has teeth. So we're all this wonderful new AI technology, but there's lots of new rules in place for compliance and taxes and EU laws around reporting your compliance inside your organization. And one of the things that's stopping us from doing that is combining data effectively from our own systems and then those of our suppliers and their suppliers and so on. So here's a nice example of using this data mesh, data fabric approach. This is Costain. They are responsible for all of the transportation project management in the UK for the Department of UK Transport, so roads and bridges and trains and so on. And this is exactly the problem they faced. So the UK has decided to be carbon neutral by 2050. 28% of that is transport. But in order to get an idea of what the carbon footprint is of all of these different projects requires huge amounts of different data sets all being brought together. But again, instead of trying to do it all in one place, where you've lost all of it's not up to date, you lost the contact. They put it all into a dashboard that allows them to keep track of everything, but there's no data stored in here itself. I can have a high-level view across all of the different projects and their carbon footprints and other ESG measures, social value, biodiversity, and so on. But I can drill down all the way to the location of an individual earth mover on a building site. But all of this, you're just bringing the data as and when needed together for analysis. And why are they doing this? Well, obviously, yes, carbon footprint, but carbon footprint is energy. At the end of the day, they're also going to be able to save a huge amount of time and money by benchmarking different product areas, and they're starting to use predictive. So predict when a project is going to go over a budget long before it actually does so they can head it off. Another great project here in Turkey, this is Mahtur Fompak. They make car seats, for example. They have 35 of these different robot construction stations, but they've created a digital twin metaverse version of their factory. So they actually use Unity 3D game engine, and each of these robot construction areas has its digital twin, and all of the data is being brought in from the real world to this virtual environment, and they're using it for sustainability. So they get the electricity and gas use for each individual item as and when it's created is being calculated. So rather than doing sustainability at a very high level across their entire operation, they can actually do it on an individual product basis, and so they can make better decisions about how to improve their business. So making sustainability actionable is a big part of the opportunity going forward. It's not just a compliance problem for finance, it's about using that data to optimize the way you do business. Another big part about data is just making sure that you have it to everybody in your organization as and when they need it. Who can tell me where this is? There's a hint in the picture. Sydney, there you go. Yes, so Sydney Opera House there, if you hadn't noticed. This is Taronga Zoo, and I just thought this was a lovely application. So a good example of just making sure that everybody in your organization on the shop floor has the data they need to do their jobs. So it could be a little bit of analytics, but it's also HR functions, if they want to buy something, a map of the zoo, a staff directory. And my favorite button here is this one, the hazards and emergencies, because they had an incident. They had a fence malfunction late last year, and the lions escaped. This is not good in a zoo. But because they had this application, the pockets of all of the staff, they're mucking out the zebra cage, and suddenly they get the alerts on their phone, and so they're able to evacuate all of the guests very quickly. They got the people to fire the tranquilizer darts into the cubs. Interesting enough, the adults actually came back on their own, like walked around. Yeah, okay, all right, now time to go back home. But it was the younger cubs that had to be tranquilized because they were a little more adventurous and wanted to go see the world. So there you go. Technology helping save people's and lions' lives. Isn't that great? All right. So we're giving people data, but we now have this massive opportunity to do a lot more. If you think about what's actually stopping innovation in most organizations, it's not the technology, it's the availability of resources to actually implement that technology. Thanks to low-code and no-code and the cloud, we now have this amazing opportunity to let business people do more of the innovation themselves in their area of expertise without technology and IT being a bottleneck. Here come the purple people. They call the purple people because they're halfway between the red technology professionals and the blue business people. And according to Gartner, they call them business technologists, which is a lot more boring. They're going to make up to the vast majority of innovation is going to come from these new combination of business and IT technology skills. So what really changed? Well, the power users got more powerful. Instead of just being able to access information or just do a little bit of automation, now they can start really creating end-to-end user workflows, their own business processes, and this is being now vastly accelerated with these new generative AI opportunities. Here's a nice example. This is DHL in Europe. If you're a driver of a DH truck, the first thing you do is you go and check for damage. You know, if you take a rental car, you take pictures of it so that they don't charge you for any of the dents. It's the same thing for them. They can take a picture, upload it with a description of what the problem was, and it's integrated with all of their back-end systems. So, nice little application. What's interesting about it is that it was built by the business people themselves without a single line of code. So these latest tools, they allow you to create applications by just dragging and dropping blocks and putting them together. So I can just say, take photo. I don't have to understand all of the code behind that. It just lets me take a photo. Now, people are starting to do this inside organizations, but the real opportunity isn't no code or low code. It's co-code. You need to be able to take this kind of algorithm, application, but you want it to have the business people and IT people working together so that the IT people provide them with the right blocks. You don't want them recreating the wheel or key figures. And then also they need to do something, need to open a head count or send an invoice. That should just be a block that's been pre-created by the IT team. So that's IT people and business people working together to create the next opportunities. Now, what's actually happening today is, look at the AI opportunity is you can now start doing that, just design me a new business process that I just talk and it turns it into code for me. And again, working with the IT people to actually wire it into the systems. So what goes wrong today? Not everybody is ready to be enabled. Again, this is AI generated. I did not give a toddler a chainsaw. There's a lot of chaos right now as people are actually using Excel and Power Apps, and they're actually creating this themselves, but they're doing it in a way that isn't governed. So you have people recreating the wheel. Some of them are just illegal because they don't respect GDPR. So we need to have it in an environment that is actually governed and secure. And one aspect of it, so business people are empowered to do something, but what's stopping them from just making something you shouldn't be doing more efficient? At the end of the day, you still need to know what you should be doing. And this is where business process management and business process intelligence comes in. This is my knee. I live in Paris, and during the lockdown, in the pandemic, we were locked down, only allowed out an hour a day. And I decided that I would use that hour to run as fast as I could to stay fit. And that was a really bad idea because after a week I couldn't even walk, and so I had to go see the doctor, and I said, "What's wrong with me?" And she said, "I don't know. You have symptoms, right? You have pains, but until we do an MRI, I can't see what the actual problem is, so I can't know how to fix it." It's the same thing inside our organizations. We often know the symptoms. We see the results of something going on, but we don't really know what's happening. With business process intelligence, we now have the opportunity to now do comparisons of our business processes. And so here's a process, we have the way it's supposed to work, and then we have all of the exceptions. And this turns out to be a fantastic tool for building the ROI case for transformation, because I can say, well, okay, here's the process, 10% of the time there are exceptions. But we've done benchmarking, and our competitors only have 5%. So if we were as good as them, how much time and money would we be able to save? And that builds then the opportunity to implement new ways of working. And then we can start taking it further. So in the future, we've got these diagnosis tools and benchmarks, but we also have a lot of best practices. So here's your process, and here's what we should do better. And in the cloud world, you can start implementing it automatically. So you can actually have more automated automation, where the technology you're using starts suggesting to you what you should do differently. The analogy I've been using is, today we're on a staircase. So we have to physically move up each step each time we want to do something new. In the future, it should look more like an elevator where we step on and we can enjoy the innovation ride because we have all of this intelligence that's helping do everything better and better. All right, final section, final thoughts. We're now in the horseless carriage phase of artificial intelligence. In other words, we're taking the new technology, but we're bolting it on to the existing ways of working. But we always have to remember that the real opportunity is to take a step back and rethink what we're doing in light of what is now possible. So this provides value, but we always have to be thinking a little bit further ahead, and I believe the keynote at the end of today will be all about second order and third order thinking. And it's a good time to rethink our value propositions as individuals. I saw this tweet the other day. The value of 90% of my skills just dropped to 0. The leverage for the remaining 10% went up 1,000 times. I need to recalibrate. I honestly believe that for every single one of us, part of our job is probably now obsolete. But some other part of it could be turbocharged by these new technologies. And we really need to take the time to figure out which is which and work out how we're going to leverage that turbocharged technology in the future. One thing I do know is it's not going to look like Terminator. It's not the technology that is coming for us and replacing us. It's about Iron Man, where Iron Man uses the technology and the suit to become a superhero, even though he doesn't, he's not a superhero himself. It's augmenting the power of human beings is ultimately what this is going to be all about. AI will make us more human, because today we're paying a lot of people to act like robots, to do the same complex thing time and time again. AI will get rid of that part of our job, and so we can concentrate on the real barriers to innovation, which are all of the people aspects. Here's my favorite quote ever. Who can tell me who's this? Somebody? Famous artist? Pablo Picasso, exactly. My favorite quote ever on computers. Computers are useless. They can only give you answers. At the end of the day, it's still up to us to understand what innovation we want, what our strategy is, where we're going. The true sign of intelligence is not knowledge, but imagination. So we all could use this time to concentrate on helping our organizations really think about innovation in a holistic way and making sure that we're taking full advantage of the technologies we already have before, even as we think about AI. One final example, just to illustrate the point. Did you know that we put a man on the moon before we put wheels on luggage? It's absolutely true. 1969, first man on the moon. The first patent for wheeled luggage wasn't until 1972. And then that was just with a strap that you pulled. Modern luggage with the handle, that wasn't until 1984. So almost 20-something years after the first luggage. And then the latest ones with the four wheels, the spinners as they call them, that was 2004, 35 years after they first put wheels on luggage, they finally got it to the... Just to illustrate that an improved technology is only one part of the bigger picture. The hard part is all of the culture around it to make the best use of it. So why didn't people use wheeled luggage? Well, because they're all porters who would help you with your luggage. And there was a cultural aspect. It was seen as not manly to carry, everybody had to carry their luggage. It's just what people were used to. So it's all of that society and cultural change that we have to constantly remind is the most important. Thank you very much for your time. I'll be around for the rest of the day, and thank you.